If you want to build a ripped and very strong midsection, the last thing you want to be doing is random body weight burner workouts that you find online. While they're great for a little bit of cardio, you're expending a little bit of energy, you're getting a big pump and burn, it does not develop a whole lot of muscle mass. It doesn't create those ripped midsections. And most importantly, it doesn't build a lot of strength at all. If you're wanting to lose fat, eat less food. If you want to build your abs, train your abs just as you would with any other muscle group. When you train your biceps, you do bicep curls, you progressively overload, you increase the weight, increase the reps, and it's the same thing with abs. And what we're doing here is we're doing 3 key exercises. They're gonna help you build crazy level of strength. You can do it at home and you can work through the progressions and slowly build insane strength while obviously building a ripped midsection in the process. So scrap your burner circuits, scrap all those shitty online thingos. I'm gonna give you guys sets and rep ranges to follow here and obviously find where your strength is at and we'll work through those progressions. So let's get into that first exercise. So the very first exercise, what we're focusing on is building up a lot of overall push strength with our upper body too, for sure, but a lot of core strength and isolating our hip flexors as well. And what we're building here is L-sit variations, but there are so many progressions that we can work through regardless of where you're starting at or how insanely strong you are. And there's variations that I haven't unlocked either. So the very, very first progression, there are 7 progressions we're gonna work through, is simply a leg assisted end sit. So with that leg assisted end sit, you wanna try and push yourself up and get into that end sit position here. So this is an end sit and you can kind of just place your legs on the ground. I also want to emphasize the fact that you don't need parallel at all. What you can do is you can still raise your hands off a couple books. So this works totally fine too. Don't always need parallettes. The joys of calisthenics is we don't need anything really, probably besides a pull-up bar. But either way, that's the first progression with that single leg end sit. What you want to eventually do is try and get your legs off the ground into an end sit. And even if your hips happen to shift backwards a little bit and you're in this position, that's totally fine. So just try and lift your legs up and just get better at holding your overall body weight, making sure you're focusing on pushing your shoulders down and locking out your elbows completely. You're not subtly flex. You are gonna be stronger in that position, but we don't wanna build that. You want to fully lock out those elbows, push the shoulders down. So eventually you wanna get as high as you can, and then your hips also in line with your arms. If you're a little bit like this at the start, that's fine. Focus on trying to get into that position though. From there, we're keeping that same engagement and we're working through to the third progression, which is a single leg L sit. So with a single leg L sit, the same thing, shoulders down, locked out elbows, hips in line with our wrists, and try and lengthen that leg out and hold that. Making sure you're also pointing your toes. With everything you do in calisthenics, for the most part, always keep those toes pointed and lock out your knees. If you're at this position, obviously building up a lot of strength, which is absolutely awesome. You can start thinking or eventually start progressing to a bit more of a modified L sit. So slowly lengthening those knees out as best as you can while keeping obviously that good form. The fifth progression from there is obviously eventually getting into that L sit. What I want to make sure with the L sit is that you're locking out your knees, pointing your toes, and your hips are in line with your wrists. If you can hold that position for that recommended rep range, you are seriously flying, and that's an insane level of strength. But we have 2 more progressions we can work through. Progression number 6, where we're working through definitely some more intermediate and even advanced level calisthenics, which is sick. So from here, we're starting to slowly aim to shift our hips more forward and lift our feet up while obviously keeping our knees completely extended and once again, toes completely pointed. So from here, obviously try and get as high as you possibly can, working toward that V-sit, and eventually if you can try and get all the way into that I-sit with the massive amount of hip compression. I'm not at that level yet, requires a lot of hip compression and hamstring mobility strength, but that's something you can certainly aspire to eventually do. What I really want to emphasize in this position is you want to be training for probably somewhere around that 3, 4, maybe even 5 sets, but focusing on strength obviously. So we want to be working in those lower second hold range. I highly recommend working somewhere in that 4 to 7 second hold range and then progressing through that range. And once you get on the upper end of a variation, let's say you're doing an end sit now for like 8 seconds, that's when you can try and attempt the next progression and you can work through in that range. And making sure you're resting enough between each set. I'd recommend 3 minutes. Practically, if that's too long, you can do 2. I wouldn't do any less than that. The more rest, the absolute better with building strength and even building muscle too. Let's move to that next exercise. Second exercise, we're gonna focus on progressing through our drag and flag variations. And while that is somewhat of more of an intermediate advanced skill, there are 100% variations that regardless of whether you're a complete beginner or somewhere in between, there are levels for you, I promise. And it's an excellent way to build up that rip midsection and obviously a crazy amount of strength and even work through those lats as well. So as you can see with a lot of these exercises, building up all of that core strength. We're not just building our abs, we're building up that whole midsection with those upper body muscles still adding to it. And that is what core is. Core isn't just your abs, absolutely everything working in conjunction with each other. So what we're doing here, we're starting with absolutely anywhere that you can hold something somewhat just above the ground. I'm using my fridge. So we're really improvising here, but you can use a lot of different variations. You could probably use your bed, the bottom of your bed at home. Try not to break things, really make sure it's sturdy first. However, you can see here, I'm using a towel to not completely damage my upper body. And then from here, the very first progression we're doing is simple knee raises. So getting into that position and getting stronger just in that hip flexion. What I want to make sure you're doing with these leg raises is making sure that your lower back is staying in contact with the ground. If it's raising up through there, you're just not building up the right musculature and core compression. So bracing through and pushing your spine onto the ground and holding that position. And once you're able to do those knee raises, you can attempt leg raises from there. So that's the second progression. Continuing on from that, you can start doing leg raises into a butt up. So that's the third progression. Really good exercise. So the fourth progression now is we're working through to some drag and flag positions, which is super exciting. So I want you guys to get on the top of that position where you're in that butt up, curl your knees, and then start doing a tucked flag progression and raising back up. If these are too hard for you to get back up, you can just do negatives and then get back up in the butt up. So that's a progression you can do for all of these flag variations. But just try and control all the way down to that full horizontal and then get back up. So that's the start of those drag and flag progressions now. Fifth progression we're working through now is we're starting to obviously, same again with the L-sits, we're lengthening our legs out further to increase that complexity and difficulty. So what we're doing now is we're going from that tucked position into a fully single leg. Point your toes, look at your knees, squeeze your glutes. Control back up. Once again, if you want to just do the negative and then come back up in a normal fashion, that's one way to progress as well. So there are a few different variations we can do in each level, but that single leg one's a great exercise too, which leads us to the next progression, which is the sixth progression. And now we're obviously evolving once again. So you're getting into that butt up position, starting nice and high, straddling your legs out, really squeeze your glutes, point your toes. And once again, getting up from there. Obviously starting to get quite difficult. You can see I'm really struggling with the fridge there. Once again, you can do the negative, come back up. That's another way to progress to that next progression. And finally, the last progression is that actual full drag and flag position. So this is what we're trying to eventually get toward. This is also obviously great for building the strength, but it also helps build you toward those front levers and build up that lat and core strength for that too. So not only are we building that strength, it's gonna help carry over to a lot of other skills, which is fantastic. Let's move to that next exercise. So the third exercise is we're building up an elbow supported leg raise. You'll see these done at the gym a lot with those elbows supported, but we can do the exact same thing with a couple high chairs and pillow. Even if you don't have high chairs, you could literally just go to the corner of a tabletop, place a couple pillows there and build it up that way. And if you're worried that when you're doing this, it's quite low, you're not gonna get full range of motion, it doesn't matter. That last end range of motion does pretty much next to fuck all. With gravity, it's just not doing a whole lot. So here we're isolating the hardest portion of the movement and taking it through the main range of motion that we wanna focus. We're also not using any momentum too, so it's making it even a lot harder, which is exactly what we want. First progression we can start with in this exercise is knee raises, so completely extended and raising up as much as you can. So this is a great progression. From there, we can do single leg raises, so raising up through that way, same way we did, trying to, once you're more confident with those knee positions, you can start just slowly lengthening further out. So starting now forward and trying to raise up with a little bit more extended knees until you can eventually do it completely straighted, trying to get up to the height of your hips. That's the goal. And then beyond that, if you're quite strong, you can really start isolating that hip compression and raising as absolute high as you can. With this exercise, we're doing once again those multiple 3 to 5 sets, but we're working in a higher rep range here. So we're working a little bit more endurance, still very, very conditioning, strength focused, somewhat for sure, but we're working in that higher rep range a little bit here. Once again, making sure you're resting enough between each set, trying to get those legs up as high as you possibly can. So with these dragon flags, in terms of the programming and what I recommend following, somewhere between 3 and 5 sets, working in that 3 to 5 rep range. So this is very strength focused, but still getting enough repetition, pretty good for building muscle as well. You can go for a little bit higher rep ranges if you really want to focus on building more muscle than strength, but I think this is a nice bridge between the two, which is great. And then obviously making sure, especially because this is so difficult, resting enough between your set. Once again, I recommend 3+ minutes for sure with this one. 3 exercises done and dusted, that's the video. The most important thing is that you are consistently building those 3 exercises and making sure that you're perfecting the form. If you need help with all of that, I've got a community where you can actually get feedback and get all the guidance in the world. There's also programs in there, walkthroughs, video tutorials, absolutely everything. Either way, I hope you liked the video. Like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, all the best. Keep smashing your training. Let's fucking go.